order to fix our economy and build a better society, we first need to come to the awareness that business as usual is simply not sustainable. The separation of labor and capital has driven a wedge between the financial world and the real world, causing working people and the environment to become subservient to the demands of the economy. Recent shocks to the economy have caused many people to wake up and realize how vulnerable we are. Young people and others who have tried to do everything right feel betrayed by the system. They're starting to question traditional wisdom and traditional approaches to solving problems. It's one thing to notice the macro-level problems, but many of us fail to connect cause and effect. These systemic issues connect back to beliefs that are widely held and behaviors that are considered normal. We don't realize how we are causing our own destruction. The responsibility for change lies with the individual. The solution begins with you and me. We shouldn't waste energy trying to overthrow or fix the current system. We need to accept things as they are now. But acceptance is not complacency. We also need action. Taking action is not a matter of mobilizing against an oppressor, but rather changing the way that we as individuals choose to operate. Once enough people understand this new way of operating, we can begin to build a new economy within the existing one. In economics, there are two main challenges: creating wealth sustainably and distributing wealth. So how can we balance the need for individual self-determination while encouraging people to make decisions that benefit society and the planet? Expecting constant altruism seems impractical and utopian. The way to get individuals to make choices that benefit the group is through a moral code, simple guidelines and constraints. You're free to do what you want, just follow a certain set of rules. The problem that we have today is that there is no personal moral code for the economy. Free market advocates rely on an invisible hand to guide outcomes. Progressives want systemic change and regulation, but not personal morality. The third way doesn't deny the existence of natural economic laws, but acknowledges the existence of moral laws in addition to economic laws. Creating the right system begins with you and me applying the moral law. So what sort of moral code are we talking about anyway? Well, we need something simple, something that everyone can understand. It should be voluntary, so that you can opt in if you want and live it in a way that makes sense to you. Let's consider an example that already exists, the Buy Local movement. This movement happened because there were people that shared common values, specifically the belief that it's good to support your local economy. This belief was operationalized into a simple statement of principle: buy local. Various tools emerged, such as farmers markets, which allowed people to live this principle. In some places, this developed into systemic solutions, such as local distribution networks and even local currencies. So buying local might be considered to be a moral principle, but it's one that people can opt into and live as much or as little as they want. Now, in order to create some guidelines that will help us fix our economy, let's go back to a time before labor and capital became separated. Let's consider the example of a pre-industrial farmer. From this example, we can identify three basic principles. First, for farmers, ownership of the land and tools was an ideal to be sought after. Not every farmer was a landowner, but no one considered the idea of renting land or working as a laborer to be optimal or desirable. Everyone wanted to become owners. They understood that ownership offers benefits, but brings with it risks and responsibilities. Having access to land allowed farmers to be self-reliant, yet they continually depended on providence. Security came from the land and not from the accumulation of wealth. Next, they knew that the real value of the farm was the harvest that it produced year after year. With the right cultivation techniques, they knew that this return could last indefinitely. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the American frontier engaged in speculation. They would buy up land, and then, after more settlers came and the values went up, they would sell for a profit. But for many Americans, owning a farm was a matter of pride and self-sufficiency, and such farms stayed within the family for generations. And finally, the farmer knew that the land and his crops required constant care and attention. It seems obvious, but the farmer couldn't live elsewhere and just check in on his crops every once in a while. He stayed on his property, worked the land, and took care of the farm himself. He may have had help, but he managed the work directly. So, in this pre-industrial example, there are three general principles that can be applied to our modern capital-intensive economy. We might form these into complete sentences as follows. Number 1, we must seek to become owners of productive capital. Number 2, we must derive value from the long-term use of capital rather than the exchange of capital. And number 3, we must manage capital actively and directly. In the context of the small family farm, these principles seem like common sense, but in our modern economy, they are not common at all. In fact, if you suggest them, you may not be taken seriously. Yet, we can make the case that the violation of these 3 principles and their accompanying corollaries has led to practically all the major economic and environmental problems that we face today. In upcoming episodes, we'll explore each of these principles in depth. Applying them involves simple but significant changes in the way we run businesses, in the way we invest and save, and in the way we operate as consumers, workers, and citizens. We'll need to challenge commonly held assumptions about what is normal. So what can you and I do to fix our economy and make the world a better place? Learn these principles, internalize them, commit to act on them, and then find others who are willing to do the same. Real change will happen when people come together and decide to do things differently. Before us is an opportunity to self-organize, but self-organizing requires self-governance and self-control, a morality that must be fully internalized at an individual level.